What's going on, guys? We are back with the RPO College Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jerome Jones, and we got my man Ray Roberts right here. How you doing, Ray?
I'm good, Jerome. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. Doing great. It is bowl season, bowl mania. Let's get right into this, man, because we got a lot to talk about with a lot of games, with a lot of teams. There have been some games from last week that we need to talk about from the championship weekend. It was a wild weekend. What championship weekend, there's a lot of good games going on and tight games, a lot of scoring. So we're gonna be get right into that. Before we do though, Ray, let's talk about some. This is Christmas week, so it's Christmas coming up. Tell me something special that you be doing this week. Anything special?
No, nothing real special. Just getting together with family, like my wife, my son, and her brother and nephew. Usually we would get together for Christmas Eve with a lot more family members, but because of COVID this year, we're gonna kind of take it easy with that stuff. So
Yeah,
like I wish
Christmas.
everybody would, but everybody's not doing it. So we'll see how it works out.
Definitely. Christmas is definitely going to be different this year for me as well. It's just going to be a little bit slower. Not much going on. Just staying with my immediate family, my mom, my brother, and we're going to have a small Christmas this year. It's going to be quiet, but hey, man, we got a pandemic going on. We all trying to stay safe. We all got work and stuff like that afterwards. So I hope everybody that's going out for Christmas and things like that, just please make sure you're staying safe. And we want you guys to be healthy and be able to come back to the RPO podcast every Wednesday night on 7 o'clock. So we want to make sure that you stay in here and stay locked and stay healthy so you can check us out too. So, but let's get right into some of these games because we got some nice gifts and we have some gifts coming up with some of these bowl games, and I want to talk about it a little bit. So we're gonna talk about Week 16 at first, how Week 16 kind of went down, and let's talk right about it. Let's get right into our first game. I'm gonna go with Nebraska versus Rutgers. Nebraska won the game by one touchdown, 28-21 to Rutgers. Right, what do you think about that game?
I just was a kind of a back and forth game. Wasn't a bad game, and Rutgers is really Rutgers has picked up the second half of the season. They've actually played some more consistent football, so I'm excited about it. I root for Rutgers. It's been a tough couple of years since Seattle left the first time. Hopefully now that he's back, hopefully he gets them going in the right direction. It does look like, again, every week they're improving a little bit, so we'll see.
What's going on, Lewis? Thanks for coming in the chat room, by the way. What's up, Lewis? With my guy Lewis, so I had to shout him out. Okay, Ray, I'm sorry.
They did lose to Nebraska, but Nebraska's a pretty good team, so no shame in losing to Nebraska. So
Definitely. No shame in it. I think Rutgers, and we talked about this last week. Rutgers is looking like a team that could be a lot better, especially when you get the recruits coming in a little bit more in a couple of years. Give them get maybe 2 years, and I feel like they're gonna be very competitive. They got Greg Schiano back, and he's building a culture already with even without the recruits that he wants playing right now. He got guys playing.
If you look at how they've improved on defense from last year to this year, that's pretty encouraging, really. So
definitely, it's definitely a turnaround. But yeah, Nebraska did their thing. The game turned out pretty much what I thought it was going to be. A close game. These teams wasn't competitive in the win-loss column, but I thought it was going to be a decent game. It turned out to be a decent game. The 4 turnovers killed Rutgers, though. The 4 turnovers definitely killed. I'm sorry, Nebraska got 4 turnovers. Sorry, but they survived it, and turned out to be a decent game. And like I said, Rutgers is going to be one of those teams that people are going to be looking at the next couple of years. So,
I mean, that was it. That was the encouraging part. Rutgers had a couple sacks. They got a couple turnover, a couple interceptions. I think a fumble recovery. So their defense has played much better this year than they have the last couple of years. So again, definitely encouraging. So we'll see how they make out. I mean, I can't really, after the last 2 or 3 years, there's only one way they can go, hopefully. So
yeah, definitely. So we'll see how they go. But let's get to our next game. This game was a crusher for me because I had some guys on this team, And I thought, Marshall lost 2 games lately, and they was rolling. They were 7-0 at one point. Lost 2 games. They lost to UAB. I thought these teams was kind of evenly matched in a sense, but I thought that Marshall's going to bring it out. They were very underwhelming on offense. Marshall's defense is always really good, but Ray, what do you think about this game?
I mean, like you said, they they didn't play great on offense, and UAB is a pretty solid defensive team. I mean, we go through the stats. No one's stats were that outstanding. It was more of a defensive game. Kind of a little boring, to be honest with you. Kind of sloppy a little bit. So, I
Yeah,
mean, it was an okay game. You
definitely.
know,
Brandon Knox, one of the running backs that it's a sleeper to me. I think that he's a good running back. They shut him down on 62 yards for
they
17
did.
attempts. They really
He
shut him
only
down.
averaged, yeah, he only averaged 3.9 yards a carry. Yeah, I think that's really kind of what hurt them.
Yeah,
Grant Wells for quarterback for Marshall was not great, but usually they kind of rely on their running game, and they only had 130 yards rushing as a team in this game. So that's probably why it turned into a more of a kind of a defensive low scoring game, which you kind of expected with UAB because usually they're a pretty good defensive team, but they never let Marshall really get their feet on the ground as far as running, and that really kind of like made it the kind of game it was. So
definitely. They're the type of team that they're stout on defense and stout on running, and that's what they really rely on. And they got rid of that big aspect of the game, which is only the running game, and they only got 67 yards out of Knox, a
yeah.
total of 130 yards total. So I think that really took away their staple in their game plan, and it just didn't go well for them after that. So
Yeah, I mean Xavier Gaines, their tight end, who's a pretty solid player, only had one reception. I mean, it was for 70 yards, but they kind of like to feed him the ball. And again, they never got their running game going. And that, if you can shut down Marshall's running game, usually you're going to be pretty good against them. So,
definitely. Another small game coming out of the MAC. Um, we got Ball State beating Buffalo. So Buffalo been rolling as well. They were 5-0 before this game, losing their first game in the championship game at that. And another team. I'm sorry. Did I say Ball State? So they play Ball State. 38 to 28. Another team that relies on a running game and defense. And although Buffalo had a really good, solid run passing game that game, but they took away their strength, which is the running game. And our guy Jared Patterson, shout out to Jared Patterson, big fan of the inside the hatches, nice guy. He only had 47 yards on 18 carries, so they really took away him, and played really good defense. So, what do you think about this one, Ray?
just like you just said, Jared Patterson really never got his legs under him.
Yeah.
Probably, I mean, obviously it
First
was his late.
time all year, man. I
Yeah, I
think
was
this is
going to
the
say,
first time he didn't have 100 yards, which is very, very surprising. Like he usually have like 200. I think one game he had like almost 400, something like that. So, yeah,
again, he never got his legs underneath of him. I mean, Buffalo came back and made it a little bit more respectable with a 38-28 score, but really, Ball State was able to do whatever they wanted on offense. Drew Plitt, their quarterback, was very efficient, 20 for 32, 273 yards, 3 touchdowns. He did have one pick, but I mean, he threw the 3 touchdowns and had a rushing touchdown too. So he was responsible for 4 scores. Ty Evans had a nice average, a little over 5 yards a carry. Only ran the ball 18 times, but he had 94 yards. Justin Hall had a nice game, scored a touchdown to wide receiver on the reverse. They just never Ball State got the lead and never really let Buffalo get their running game going again. Kind of like the Marshall UAB game, a little bit more of a high scoring game, a little bit more, a better game to watch. Just again, you expect Buffalo to go out there and run the ball and dominate the line of scrimmage and on offense, and they just did it. So
definitely. Yeah, and Ball State, they really poured it in the second quarter. They had 28 other 38 points all in the second quarter. So they really poured it
yeah,
in that quarter right before halftime. And once that happened, I feel like the momentum just like got killed for Buffalo, and they just really couldn't recover from that.
Yeah, they never recover from that first half. So
Definitely. All right, let's get to our next game. We're gonna go Oregon versus USC. This game was a great game. Ray, me and you talked about this last week. How USC been having some issues starting off the game very slow, and that was the same case this week, and it did not help them. They lost to the Oregon Ducks. Ray, what do you think about this one?
they again, like you said, they started out slow. I mean, the problem with USC is their offensive line is really not very good.
Yeah,
They have decent skill players. They have Slovis, a quarterback who I really like. Almond St. Brown, who's a very good football player. Um, he actually got injured early in the third quarter, which kind of hurt them a lot. And they can't block. They don't block up front, man. Oregon had pressure on Slovis the whole game. I mean, just never really got started. I mean, if you look at his game, I mean, 28 to 52, 2 touchdowns, 320 yards. It looks solid, but 3 picks, a lot of pressure up front on USC's offensive line. He didn't look as good as he had. So
correct. Yeah, he didn't look as good as he had. Like you said, the 3 picks and only having 38 rushing yards in the entire game. 38 rushing yards.
30 only 38 rushing yards. Really, none of their running backs did anything. Marcus Stepp actually had a rushing touchdown, but it was a short touchdown. Their offensive line is really not very good. So
The longest rushing game in the entire game was 8 yards. That was the longest one.
yeah, it
So
was, again, it wasn't really a great. I mean, if you like defensive football, it was a solid game to watch. But
yeah,
really, I don't know if Oregon's defense is that great or if USC's
I think
offensive line is that bad. To be honest with you.
I think it's a common. It was. It wasn't like Oregon's defense is okay. They're not the greatest, but like the O line just didn't help them at all, and it really
No,
showed that.
it really did. You never just seen Slovis never really seemed comfortable in the pocket. He tried to get out of the pocket, make some plays, throwing the ball, but that's not his game. He's a guy
Yeah,
who wants to stay in the pocket. And he don't mind moving around a little bit, but you got to let him give him a platform to throw the ball from and set his feet. He just never really could. So
correct. Yeah, yeah. So, like we said, USC man, it's something about them starting and the offensive line. We'll see what happens with them, but yeah, that was a huge problem that I had with them. And I believe last week we both had USC, but we both said they need to start off faster, and it was not a fast start
and,
like we talked
and
about.
they did not. And once they get behind and the offensive line can't protect, the defense knows they can just go after the quarterback. And basically, that's their game right now. If Slovis can't set his feet and make good, accurate throws, they're not going to score many points. I mean, they scored 24, but it didn't even look like again, St. Brown getting hurt kind of hurt them a lot because he's the
Yeah,
one player on offense who can stretch the defense vertically. But again, he didn't look great because he didn't really get a chance to set his feet. And again, I like Slovis, but I think he is the kind of quarterback that I hate the term clean pocket. No quarterback plays with a completely clean pocket, but you have to give him a platform at least inside, outside to throw from, and he just never did. So
yeah, definitely. All right, let's get to our next game. This game was very close at one point, and then Ohio State do what Ohio State does. It's, even if they look like they're down and out, all of a sudden they start pouring in touchdowns and they start looking really good out of nowhere. And they're really good at adjusting at the next level. So Northwestern, shout out to them. They did a really wonderful job keeping Ohio State, but Ohio State going to do what Ohio State does. 22-10. Ray, what do you think about this one?
I think that, like you said, Ohio State, Northwestern had a really good game plan against them.
Yeah.
Got to Justin Fields a good bit. Had him throw to 2 interceptions. I think I don't want to say that Justin Fields is not good. He's going to be drafted fairly high, but I think people are probably reevaluating him right now because against the best two defenses he played this year, against this one and against
Oh,
I
what?
can't
Wisconsin?
remember if there was another defense he really struggled against, but I don't remember which
Wisconsin?
one it was. It wasn't Wisconsin though. It was
Oh, oh wow, I'm forgetting. Oh,
yeah,
Illinois.
I
I
have
mean,
a brain.
Indiana. Indiana. Sorry.
And yeah, he really struggled against Northwestern and Indiana's defense for whatever reason. And I mean, but again, Ohio State's a more talented team, and you saw that in the second half of the game where they took control. So
Yeah. Yeah, they have so much talent around them where you always like soon as they start they get that little spark, then you're like, up, here it goes, and then they start scoring, and it just looks easy after a while. But I will say that shout out to
yeah,
Northwestern. They came out with a really good defensive game plan to rattle that offense, and they was playing really well. One of my favorite guys on that team is Patty Fisher. He looked really well. He did really well in that game. So yeah,
I think that you see saw Trey Sermon from Ohio State caught fire in the second half, and I mean over 300 yards rushing, averaged over 11 yards a carry, two touches. I think after Fields had struggled a little bit in the first half and then in the third quarter, they were like, you know what, we're running the ball. Let's just keep running the ball and kill clock. And now that we have the lead, we can basically just ride that to the end. So
yeah,
that's pretty much
it
what
was
we did.
getting to a point where it was like because they only had Ohio State only had 114 yards, which is kind of unheard of with them, especially when they have Justin Fields. But it was getting to a point where they're like, all right, there's gonna be a running play, and they just their offensive line just destroyed Northwestern's defensive line. Like they got off the ball really hard, which put the linebackers under a lot of pressure. Like I said, Patty Fisher had a good game, but it doesn't help when the running back have big holes. And Sherman was making plays too. I'm not going to discredit anything that he did either. He had 331 yards, but man, like it was getting to a point where they're like, all right, it's going to be a run, and then yeah, they just ran all over them, especially in the second half.
I mean, Northwestern is usually pretty good defense. They played good defense in this game.
Yeah, they
I
did.
think that they tried to take away Ohio State's passing game, and so they were. I think they were content on giving up rushing yards as long as they didn't get that many touchdowns from it. But then
Mhm.
again, in the end, Ohio State's a more talented team, and you kind of saw that play out that way. So
Yeah, and you also got to remember they didn't have Chris Olivier.
they
They're
didn't. I was going to mention Olave didn't play in this game, and that didn't help them at all. But
yeah,
I mean, you can't just say one guy should change their offense that
that's true.
much. I mean, if you're a potential first round pick as a quarterback, you need to make plays with other guys on the field. I mean,
True.
you're still Ohio State, so
That's definitely true. So, good game. We'll see Ohio State in the championship playoffs. So we'll see how that goes.
not
Let's
for
get
long, but yeah,
to. I'm sorry.
not for long, but yeah, you'll see them.
They play in Notre Dame, ain't they?
No, they play Clemson. They're
Clemson.
one
Oh,
and done.
yeah, they're
Yeah,
done. All right, let's get to our next game. We got Oklahoma Sooners versus the Ohio State Cyclones. 27-21, Oklahoma won the game. This was a close game. I think I said this. I thought this was going to be a close game. It pretty much turned out exactly how I thought it was going to be. A very close game where Oklahoma just squeaking out. Pretty kind of regressed after we was talking about how good he was playing the last couple of games.
he did.
Better defense though. So Ray, what do you think about this one?
I think that Oklahoma kind of jumped out to a lead, like they kept getting the lead back. When they would score, then Iowa State would come back and get close, and then back and forth too. Like you said, well, Brock Purdy had been playing better football like the last few weeks. And really, if you look at his stats, except for the three picks, he had a solid game 27 to 40,
Yeah,
322 yards. So, only had 13 incompletions. The problem is three of them were picks. So,
exactly. Yeah, that was the big problem. And Oklahoma came out storming. By the halftime, it was 27-4. I'm sorry, 24-7.
yeah.
And Iowa started coming back a little by little, but those turnovers was just at the worst times, literally at the worst times.
They were. Then again, if you look at Purdy's numbers, they look solid,
Yeah,
except for the 3 picks. And Xavier Hutchinson for Iowa State had a nice game, 10 receptions, 114 yards. Um, Tight end Charlie Kohler was a nice old player, had a nice game, 6 receptions, 92 yards, touchdown. Again, Oklahoma's they jumped out to a kind of like a 3-score lead, and then Iowa State kept fighting back and fighting back. And I hate to say it, if you take away the 3 picks, maybe they win the game.
yeah, I think they would have. If it would have. Oklahoma had a good balance on offense this game. They usually a little bit more pass heavy, and I feel like they're trying to take the ball away from their freshman a little bit more, just because he's been struggling in the beginning of this season. And now I think they're trying to balance it out. I think it's working out for them.
Yeah, I think that Rattler is a talented kid, but he's still a young guy and still getting his feet underneath of him.
Correct.
I just think that again, Oklahoma got out to a lead and was content with that, and then Rattler really didn't play as well in the second half as he had in the first half. So
definitely. So, all right, let's get to our next game. We got Army versus Air Force. Army beats Air Force 10-7. Army beats them with only 2 passing attempts. And we kind of already know this. This is how Army operates. But 2 passing attempts. Air Force actually passed the ball a lot more than they normally do. Also, they had 14 attempts. But with that being said, they also had 3 interceptions. So, right, what do you think about this one?
This was a snooze fest, man. Let's face it, it really was. It was. I didn't get to watch the game, like I said the last week. I think I kind of like I'll take my tablet and I'll like watch the highlights of the game, or it'll kind of like give me like a fast recap of the game.
Yeah.
And it wasn't quite as bad as the week before against Navy, but it was pretty close, man. Like once Army gets a lead on you, they do not want to give you the ball back. I mean, they had almost 300 yards rushing in this game again. And again, they only threw the ball twice in the whole game. I mean, I don't even. There's not even a receiver. There was not a receiver. The one receiver had a reception for minus yards.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's like I don't know how you can win a game doing that, but they do it. So it's Army. That's how they win games. So
they are 9-2 playing their ball, and that's incredible.
I mean,
they play very boring football, but they get their wins out of it. So,
Christian Anderson, the Army quarterback, only threw the ball once, but he had 147 yards rushing. I mean, so again, they had almost 300 yards as a team. So, I mean, that's their game plan. Get a lead, run the ball, play good defense. I mean, you can win games that way, just not against good teams.
Yeah.
You know?
So we're definitely keep an eye on Army. They'll be eligible. I forgot who they play, but we'll get into that later. Let's get into this next game. We got the LSU Tigers versus Ole Miss. LSU Tigers 53 points versus 48 points. Ole Miss. LSU's offense has been looking pretty good lately. Their defense has been, but their offense has been looking pretty good. Right? What do you think about this one?
No, I think that Max Johnson, the quarterback, has actually played decent football the last month.
Yeah,
he really has. He was like a little bit of an unknown, even though he's Brad Johnson's son, the former Tampa Bay quarterback. I mean, he's a lefty, which everything looks weird when you watch a left-handed quarterback play. It just looks weird, but he's really has actually come alive, man. 27 of 51, 3 touchdowns. I mean, not a bad game. Had another 45 yards rushing, 2 more touchdowns. So he's a nice athlete. He'll get some looks at the next level probably because of who his father is, and we'll see how he turns out. I mean, he had a nice game, you know. I mean, 53 points is 53 points no matter how you look at it. Their Keishan Butte, the wide receiver, had 14 receptions for 308 yards and 3 touchdowns. So he had a great game. So, I mean, Matt Corral from Ole Miss only threw the ball 27 times, but he only completed 15 of them passes. And
he had 5 picks.
and he had 5 picks exactly. So again, poor quarterback play. I mean, this is a situation where it's Ole Miss. They're going to throw the ball a lot because that's what they do. But every once in a while, I mean, if you have a quarterback who's turning the ball over like that, you might want to take the ball out of his hands a little bit. You know, but
you can't continue that. Corral had a good game though. His running back, only 17 carries, but he had 158 yards and a touchdown. I think they should have kept getting him the ball. Their running game was actually good. They had a good running game. It's just that
the problem is he's the quarterback though.
Yeah.
So I mean, like you got to be able to complete passes no matter if you're a running quarterback or not.
Yeah.
And let's face it, 15 of 27 is not good to begin with, but especially when 5 of them incompletions are picks. That's never good, man. Never good.
Yeah. So, they should have. I think they should have ran the ball. Even Parrish. I'm sorry, I mixed up the names. Parrish had a good game too, having 82 yards, 2 touchdowns. But the RPOs was doing well for them. I think they should have kept doing a lot more of those and keeping the ball on the ground and actually giving some running back more because the pass.
Well, if you know your defense isn't strong,
Yeah.
What helps out a bad defense? Control the clock. Yep. But you can't control the clock if you're throwing the ball. And 27 passes for them is not a lot of passes. But again, the 5 picks is just a killer. So
yeah, for sure. All right, let's get to our next one. We got Minnesota versus Wisconsin. Wisconsin winning 20-17. We think about that one, Ray?
Again, kind of like a little bit of a boring game. Yeah. Minnesota, as good as they were last year, they've been bad this year. Graham Mertz only threw the ball 20 times for 132 yards. They actually had another Chase Wolf come in, and he threw the ball 4 times. 5 times, completed 4 passes. It was kind of a boring game. Garrett Groshek, I'm assuming that's how you say his name. He had 154 yards rushing and a touchdown. So, I mean, he had a decent game. It just was a kind of a boring game, though. I mean, like, no one really did anything exciting on offense. Tanner Morgan, who I actually like as a quarterback from Minnesota, he struggled a little bit himself. 13 of 25. He only had 1 pick, but, I mean, nothing exceptional. Just a kind of a boring defensive game, so.
Yeah, the Minnesota been a little bit of a disappointment this year, and I think it kind of rides on Tanner Morgan as well. He's been not the greatest. He looked really good last year. This year he hasn't been good. But I do want to ask you, Ray, how you feel about Abraham, running back for
I think he's a talented kid. I mean, he had a nice game, 151 yards and 26 carries. Nice little slashing type running back. I like him.
Yeah.
Maybe I would have. I don't want to say give him the ball more times. He did run the ball 26 times, but I mean, you need to add. Tanner Morgan needs balance in the offense, and he didn't really do enough. Maybe take the ball out of his hands a little bit more.
Definitely. Yeah. So out of 7 games, he had 201 attempts for 1,076 yards and 15 touchdowns and average 5 yards per carry, 5.4 yards per carry as a junior. So I was just kind of wondering, like, is he somebody that maybe be looked at in the NFL, or maybe he should stay for another year?
Right now, he's established himself as a guy who will be a mid-round pick. I mean, if he builds on this year and Minnesota can be a little better next year. I mean, you know as well as I do, I hate to say it, if you don't win a lot of games, people will always say, well, he's not that good. He just gets he gets meaningless stats. But again, I like Abram. I think he's a good football player. We'll see. Again, it's going to be depending on what happens with PJ Fleck. There's a lot of rumbling about him not being back at Minnesota next year, even though
it's crazy. I think that's crazy.
It is crazy, and it's not
all the fact that he had last year, and then all of a sudden everybody's going against him. That's crazy.
You know how the alumni are, man.
I'm taking him in Michigan. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know how alumni are. If you're not winning, they're not happy, and they're paying the bill. So
That's true. That's true. Well, we'll see what happens with that. Well, that'll be definitely something that we'll keep an eye on. Another thing that we should be keeping an eye on is these Cardinals, man. The Stanford Cardinals winning again. I'm telling you, every time I root against them, they win. Right, but it was a close one in double overtime versus UCLA. 48-47. Very, very close game. First and foremost, I want to talk about UCLA first and foremost because they've been playing. Honestly, they've been playing a lot better than I thought they would this year. Like I said in our last podcast, I picked them simply because um, I didn't want to go against Stanford because every time I go against Stanford, I'll go for Stanford, they lose. So I've been helping them out lately, right? I've been helping them out, but Stanford came out to a good game. Started off 20-3 at halftime, and then UCLA start marching back. What do you think about this one, though?
like you said, Stanford had a big lead going into half, and then came out and you let UCLA get back in the game. I mean, Davis Mills, the quarterback from Stanford, I actually like him.
Mm-hmm.
But again, he threw 3 touchdowns, 428 yards. But you can't turn the ball over like 3 times. You can't throw 3 interceptions. You have to take better care of the football. You just do. And what happened to Stanford's defense, man? Their defense for the last 2 years has been horrible, man. I don't
Yeah,
get it.
definitely. So shout out to Inside the Hatches guy Chase Griffin from UCLA though came in and got 4 touchdowns. Didn't have a lot of attempts, only 11 attempts, 127 yards. But when he was in, he threw touchdowns and shout out to him. He did a great job. But yeah, those turnovers by Mills, man, they was killer. They did squeak out the win, but the Jones, man, I like him. I really do like him, Ray. What do you think about him?
No, I like Austin Jones. He's a nice little football player. I mean, he only averaged 4 yards a carry, but he scored 2 touchdowns. And he's
He,
a tough runner, man. He gets tough yardage. So
he's like the staple of their offense. He's the guy when they need they. And we said this before. When they need first downs, he's gonna get those first downs. He's a tough runner.
Stanford's one of them teams. It seems like their offensive line has always has some prospects in it, but they're just not physical, man.
Yeah,
They're all
weird.
technique guys.
They
They
always have
are.
like that one guy that's really good, but like everybody else is like, you know.
They're technically sound, but they're not great athletes.
Yeah,
You
yeah, yeah,
know,
definitely. All right, let's get to the last couple of games. Almost missed one, so we're gonna go to the Tulsa versus Cincinnati Bearcats. Cincinnati won 27-24. A lot closer game than I thought it was gonna be. Right. This is one of the preseason teams that you thought was gonna be really good, and they're undefeated right now. So, Ray, what do you think about the Cincinnati?
I think that Desmond Ritter is a nice player. Won 19-29, only 269 yards, but didn't turn the ball over.
Mm-hmm.
That's always a plus. Ran the ball 83 yards, had a rushing touchdown. They're a nice program right now. Cincinnati is a very nice program. I wasn't surprised by how close the score was because I think Tulsa has a very underrated defense, and they kept them in the game the whole game. And again, a little more offense from Tulsa, and I think they'd be a good team, like a little bit of a better team. Cincinnati's one of them teams like they had a really good year, and there were some people that thought maybe they should be in the college football playoff, but you saw why they're not though. They're a good team. They wouldn't survive against these other teams. They wanted any of them top four teams. They wouldn't. So.
Yeah, their team is gonna get their wins and they're gonna play. But yeah, a lot of people was wondering because Ohio State lost. Didn't lose. I'm sorry, but they got suspended games due to COVID, and they didn't play a couple of games. And a lot of people was like, "Well, Cincinnati's undefeated right now. They win a championship. They should be in the playoffs." But that wasn't gonna happen. Come on, guys.
You
That wasn't
can't.
gonna happen.
Honestly, again, this is where sometimes you got to sit back and say, "Yo, okay, this team won this many games, and Cincinnati's had a really good year. I'm not saying they haven't, but
Right.
Ohio State is still one of the more talented teams in college football. You
Yeah.
have to look at their roster and say, Okay, they only got to play 6 games this year. It is what it is, but they're still one of the top most talented teams in college football. So again, there are people that don't think Ohio State should have made the playoffs. I'm not going to debate it with them. They did only play 6 games, so it is what it is. But if you look at the talent on Ohio State when their quarterback's playing well and Olave's in the lineup, they're a good team. So
Definitely. Yeah, I think it's a little I get what everybody's talking about with that. It is a little unfair because the more games you play, the more likely you can lose a game, you know? So I get that point of it, but you gotta sometimes you gotta just take out the stats and look at the eye test and the human aspect of things. And guys,
I
Ohio
think
State's a better team. Come on.
I think if Penn State and Michigan didn't have such down years, then I think you could say you could make a justification and say, well, Ohio State didn't have to play against these teams, blah blah blah. And I just think that with it being a down year for the Big Ten, that if you would have told me they're not going to play, they're not going to make the if they're not going to play enough games, then Texas A&M should be in over both of them teams.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, and Cincinnati playing the Tulsa, it didn't give me the sense like if they would have blown them out or had
Correct.
some kind of like style points to the game, then I'd be like, oh yeah, but like it wasn't really anything that like stuck out in that game that was like eye popping to me. You know, it was a good solid win. It was a close game. And they didn't turn the ball over, but they didn't score a lot either. So it was just like, you know,
Yeah, and so every once in a while you got to look at the game and look at what your eyes tell you.
exactly.
My eyes tell me that Cincinnati is a good team, but Ohio State has more talent. So
Correct, correct. Definitely, definitely. All right, let's get to our last two games. These are the games of the week. First of all, we're gonna get to your game first, right? Because we gotta get
do we
that.
have to?
We have to listen. If Michigan was playing, I would talk about the Michigan. We gotta talk about Notre Dame. A big loss. 34-10. Ray. Y'all got shut down on your running game. Y'all only had 44 yards rushing. And I think that was the difference last time. You had a really good rushing game last time. What do you think about this one, Ray?
Well, that was the difference in the game. Notre Dame never got the running game going. They made Ian. Clemson when they were saying we're going to shut down the game. I mean, shut down the running game.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to make Ian Book do something to beat us, and he was incapable.
Correct. Correct.
He
It was
if you look
pretty
at
much
his
the opposite of the last game. It was like Notre Dame
correct,
stopped Clemson's running game, and now Clemson stopped Notre Dame's running game. But one
correct.
thing I noticed in this game, and we talked about this in our last podcast, is stopping Travis Etienne, even though he only had 10 attempts, 124 yards, and a touchdown. And right when I said this last time, like I was so convinced because, like I said before, Travis Etienne is a good player. Don't get me wrong, but when Trevor Lawrence is in a game, you cannot focus on Travis Etienne. So you can't focus on Travis Etienne. He's gonna bust out for some big runs, and he did that.
He did, and honestly, Trevor Lawrence is we all know he's the best player in college football.
He should
There's,
definitely get the Heisman. I know he won a couple of games. He should get Heisman though.
I mean, I would vote for him, but I'm not going to debate that with people because there are going to be people that are going to say this guy, that guy. I'm not going to debate that with anybody. Trevor Lawrence is the best player in college football, without a doubt. But I mean, I've seen guys win the Heisman who weren't the best player in college football. I mean, Gino Toretta won a Heisman at Miami. He wasn't even the best player on his team. So I mean, it happened. You know what I mean? So I mean, if you watch Trevor Lawrence play, when the ball comes out of his hand, it's different than any other quarterback in college football. And that's all there is to it. Again, Clemson went into the game plan thinking we're not going to let them establish the running game. We're going to make Ian Book beat us. And even he last time he ran the ball pretty well against Clemson. This time he has minus 35 yards rushing. Of course, including the 6 sacks that they had, he had minus 35 yards rushing.
Definitely. Even Williams,
So,
they shut down Williams. He had one long 24-yard rushing yard. You take that out of the question. He only had 26 yards rushing.
He had 50 for the game.
Yeah,
I mean, that's usually like a quarter or a half for this kid. I mean, and Connor Williams is a good football player. But again, Clemson crowded the line of scrimmage saying, we're going to take away your running game. Can Ian Book beat us downfield? And Notre Dame has solid receivers. Ben Skoranek is a nice possession type guy, but they're not anything where they can stretch the field. I mean, if you get time, you can throw up a 50-50 ball and their receivers will come down. But they never gave Book time to set up in the pocket. He just didn't have any time back there. And again, he had to throw on the run a lot, and he's not. I'm not going to sit here because we've talked about how Ian Book has played better the last month of the season, and I'm not going to take away how well he played the last 4 games and capsule it into one game and say he was the reason why they lost the game. Clemson was a better team last week, and they're probably a better team than Notre Dame, and they won the game. The one thing that bothers me is, and we talk, Clark Lee, Notre Dame's defensive coordinator, is going to take the Vanderbilt job. And I really wanted to bring this up last week, and I just didn't.
Yeah.
I wonder if that was on the defensive players' minds. They played a little flat on defense.
Yeah.
But I'm not making any excuses. Clemson's a better team. They deserve to win the game. So
definitely. And to get back to my Heisman chant, this year was just different, man. And I think that you have to look at things differently. Like, it wasn't like I'm about to say Travis Etienne. Trevor Lawrence, it wasn't like he was out because he was injured or something like that, or he was out because of bad play. He was out because of COVID. So in a year of COVID, you have to kind of like take that out of the account. Like, just like how you did with Ohio State, and you kind of looked at like, oh, well, they didn't play those games because of COVID. I feel like you had to do the same thing with Trevor Lawrence and just give him the trophy, man. He deserves it.
I don't even remember who won the Heisman last year. Do you know?
I forgot.
Yeah, I don't remember. I mean, Trevor Lawrence has been the best player in college football for 3 years now.
Yeah.
And let's just face it. I mean,
Burrow
won last year, right? Yeah. Well, Burrow was the guy last year, and he had a great season. I mean, 60 touchdowns speaks for itself.
Historic game.
I mean, historic season. And, yeah, I'm not going to say that true. Burrow deserves to win the Heisman last year. But Trevor Lawrence has not put up anywhere near the numbers that Burrow did last year. But he did miss a couple games. And, again, Trevor Lawrence is the best player in college football. And Trevor Lawrence will be a better quarterback than Joe Burrow, too. So
I agree. All right, let's get to our last game. And this game was fireworks. I mean, I was not expecting this out of this game, and it was a good game.
Honestly, it was probably
Alabama versus Florida. Alabama versus Florida, 52-46. What was you gonna say, Ray?
Easily the most fun game to watch the whole weekend, without a doubt. Without a doubt. I mean, you kept expecting Alabama to just pour it on, and they tried. But Florida and Kyle Trask, they just would not go away. And again, all more credit to Florida. I mean, it's a shame. If Florida wouldn't have lost to LSU, and they might have had a point where, you know what, maybe we should be one of these playoff teams. But they lost to LSU, and they lost, I think, one or two other games too. And the loss to LSU just completely took them out of the equation. So,
yeah, this game was fireworks. Like, if you like passing yards, if you like looking less defense and a lot of scoring and good quarterback play, this is the game for you. Mac Jones, 418 yards, 5 touchdowns. He did have 1 pick. Kyle Trask, 408 yards, 3 touchdowns. A couple of short run touchdowns from the running back in the red zone. This game was electric. It wasn't a lot of running yards. Florida only had 54 yards rushing. Najee Harris had a really good game, but it was out of 31 attempts. He had 178 yards, 2 touchdowns. He had a decent game, but it was all about the passing game in this game. And the
It
defense.
was
The defensives cannot stop them, especially with Devontae Smith had 184 yards and two touchdowns himself. And yeah, it was all passing. Even Najee Harris had passing
5
touchdowns.
receptions, 67 yards, 3 receiving TDs. I mean, Najee Harris had a game, man, without a doubt. 5 total touchdowns. But all the big players for both teams. You said Devontae Smith had 15 receptions, 184 yards, 2 touchdowns. For Florida, Kyle Pitts, the all world tight end, 7 receptions, 129 yards. Dude, the kid he's a wide receiver playing tight end is what he is.
Really is.
He had 129 yards, a touchdown. Kadarius Toney had 153 yards, a touchdown.
I like him.
Again, all the players in this game, what you saw was two NFL little talented teams ready to go to the next level, basically.
There's going to be a lot of these players in the
Without
first
a doubt. If you look at, they're talking about Mac Jones being a first round quarterback now. I mean, I'm not as big on Mac Jones as other people are, but he'll probably wind up getting taken somewhere in the first round, if not early second. Him, Najee Harris, Devontae Smith, Kyle Trask when it's all said and done, Kadarius Toney, Kyle Pitts. 3 or 4 of them guys are first round pick. All of those guys will be taken before days or 2 is over, without a doubt. So,
correct. I 100% agree. 100% agree. This game was definitely explosive, and it was fun. It's fun game to watch. It was definitely fun game to watch. You was like on your edge. You was like, man, is Alabama gonna lose this game? And it was just going back and forth. Alabama came on hot too. They had 35 points at halftime versus Florida 17 points. So it was a lot of back and forth. I liked it. It was definitely they got tested, and I think
it was the most entertaining game without a doubt. So
for sure. All right. Well, with that being said, guys, we're gonna get into our Bowl Mania. So Bowl Mania already began. It started yesterday, I believe, right? Yesterday.
Yes, sir.
So yesterday. We had a couple of games in that game, so we're gonna review some of those games. Let's get right into the first one. Tulane versus Nevada. Really good game. Nevada won 38-27. Tulane's quarterback, Pratt, what we just talked about not too long ago, had three picks in this game. What do you think about this one, Ray?
That was probably maybe the difference in the game. I mean, I think that both of these teams are a good, solid team. Michael Pratt had he struggled, 12 of 25, 168 yards, 2 touchdowns, but 3 picks. Cameron Carroll, the running back for Tulane, had a nice game. Yeah. Only had 10 carries, but 120 yards, touchdown. Mm-hmm. Carson Strong, the quarterback of Nevada, who's making himself like he's really an up-and-comer as far as a draft prospect. There was some talk about him coming out this year. If I were him, I would wait till next year because if he comes out next year, he's probably a top 10 pick if he keeps progressing from this year. If he comes out this year, he probably won't get taken until maybe day 2. Yeah. But I like the kid. He's definitely a good prospect. Has a nice arm. Needs to develop some touch in the ball. He throws all arm right now. Yeah, he's all arm right now. I mean, he doesn't really have put much touch in the ball. But again, a nice prospect, a kid with good size, good arm strength. Again, I would if I were advising him, I would tell him to stay in college for one more year and then next year be that first round pick, I believe. Running back Toa Tua had 102 yards on 20 carries. He had a touchdown. Had another six receptions for 77 yards, another touchdown. Cole Hunter, a nice tight end, 5 receptions, 60 yards, 2 touchdowns. Nevada is a really good offensive team.
Definitely, yeah. They're gonna be an upcoming team, especially if Carson Strong stays with that team this year. Don't come out. They got a chance to be a solid team next year. I think they're gonna have a good career over there in Nevada. Let's get to the Baka Ratten Bowl. These names on these bowls. But BYU versus UCF. BYU killing UCF 49-23. And Ray, I will say this is the Zach Wilson come out party. I am a first round pick quarterback game. What do you think, Ray?
Yeah, you know what? Before this season, I thought Zach Wilson would probably be a day two pick. I do like him as a prospect. I think he established that he's probably a first round pick after this game.
Mhm.
You know, 26 of 34, 425, three touchdowns, another two rushing touchdowns. They're a good offensive team.
Yeah.
Tyler Algier, the running back, only had 19 carries for 173 yards, average over 9 yards a carry and a touchdown. Tight end Isaiah Rex, 5 reception, 96 yards, two touchdowns. Zach Wilson did establish himself as he's going to probably be, if not a top 5 pick, probably a top 10 pick.
Yeah, I think he's the reason why this team operated and been so good this year. I mean, the only
He
game
is,
that they really struggled then was a really good Coastal Carolina defense. Other than
yeah,
that, they've been putting up nearly 50 points a game.
yep.
So
Again, he had a nice coming out party this year, and because he had a nice coming, he's going to be a first round pick now.
yeah, definitely, I definitely agree with that, and definitely looking forward to seeing him in the next level. I want to see how he does. He's going to be looked at with for a couple of teams, and we're gonna look into that. If you haven't looked already, we have an article about some teams that he may fit in on InsideTheHashes.com. So definitely check that out on our website. Our guy TJ wrote that up, so we'll see how that goes, man. We're gonna see what teams he fit into. So we'll definitely discuss that a little bit more as the season winds down a little bit. But
Also, we know that quarterback is the one position where teams are always looking for quarterbacks.
for sure,
Always.
definitely. All right, and let's get to our last game, the game that was actually on earlier today. So if you guys missed that, that was early today. Georgia Southern versus Louisiana Tech. Georgia Southern destroying Louisiana Tech 38-3. 3.
The
Ray,
scoring was exactly the way it was.
I'm not sure if you was able to watch this game, but what do you think about this one, Ray?
I was able to watch this game,
Oh,
actually. Like I told you earlier, I was
nice.
off from work today, so I actually got to watch this whole game. Shea Wertz, nice option quarterback for Georgia Southern, had himself a game. He only threw the ball 12 times, but had 126 yards and a touchdown. Ran the ball 15 times for 71 yards, three touchdowns. Running back Joe Green had 108 yards and a touchdown. They had 323 yards rushing with four rushing touchdowns. They pretty much were ahead 21-3 at half and never looked back.
Definitely. Yeah, and Aaron Allen, he struggled so bad. 24 attempts, only 10 completions, 41 yards, no touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. It was a
Yeah,
really bad game for him. He really dictated the game, and it looked really bad.
they did it. Georgia Southern's defense had their way
Oh
with
yeah,
Louisiana's offensive line. They did. So, it was what it was.
yeah. So definitely. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna talk about some bowl games. So we're not gonna go into every bowl game right now. We're gonna go into all the bowl games into our next podcast, and then our next podcast, which is next Wednesday. So make sure you check that out on 2 o'clock Wednesday. All the games are going to be after that. We're going to talk about those games after that, but we're going to talk about the games at hand that we have until then. And me and Ray are going to give our quick analysis of what we think is going to go down in that. So let's get right into it, Ray. Let's get to the first game, Memphis versus FAU. Who you think going to win that one, Ray?
I got Memphis. I mean, I got an 8.5 point line, so I'm gonna say Memphis is gonna win the game. So
I'm gonna definitely agree with that. I'm gonna do the same. Actually looking for my lines now, but yeah, I totally agree. I think Memphis is the better team. I like their running backs. I think that Gaineswell is going to be really good in that game, and
yeah,
I really think he's going to be the difference maker in that one.
I do. I mean, I hate people I know people hate it when I just pick with the line, but If it
Mhm.
were a little bit closer, I maybe lean towards FAU, but Memphis is a solid 8.5 point line.
Correct.
Probably will be more like 9.5, 10 by the time the game comes around. So
Yeah,
I
and
expect them to win pretty. I expect
yeah,
them to win pretty handily. So
definitely. And actually, the game is on right now as we speak, and Memphis is up 10-0. So I wanted to put that
yeah,
out there before we did everything. But yeah, um, um, Brandon White have a touchdown already, and that's it. So yeah, 10-0 right now, in the second quarter. So we'll see. We'll let you guys know how we feel about the game after the game ends, and we'll talk about that in the next podcast how that goes. But let's get to our next game, Ray. Hawaii versus Houston. Houston is favored by 10.5.
well, I'll take Houston to win the game. I think Houston has neither one of these teams' defense is great, but
Mm-hmm.
Houston has some decent pass rushers. I think that again, 10.5 point line tells me that Houston will win the game. So
Yeah, I think Houston's defense was been a little underwhelming this year. But they have a better. Their defense is definitely the staple of this team. And
they do.
I don't know much about Hawaii this year.
I know
Have
that Hawaii usually likes to throw the ball a lot, and like I said, Houston's defense is their line, is their strength, and I don't think they'll get a whole lot done. I know. So
definitely. So let's get to our next game. Um, Marshall versus Buffalo. Buffalo is favored by 4.5. This game was one of those games that I thought, man, this is gonna be an incredible clash. A couple of guys that we interviewed are in this game. You got Jared Patterson, who's been running really well, except for the last game he got a little shut down. And then Marshall's defense, but Marshall actually had some guys opt out already. So Trevon Beckett, a guy that we talked to from inside the hashes, he opted out already. So I was looking forward to that clash between the two guys that we interviewed. But yeah, Beckett opted out. He's like the leader of that defense. So I want to know what you think about this one, Ray.
I agree. I think Beckett opted out, and the fact that Patterson struggled in the last game, that tells me Buffalo is probably going to win this game. It's a 4.5 point line. If
Correct.
they don't win by at least a touchdown, I'd probably be surprised. To be honest with you.
Yeah, I agree. I don't agree with that line. I think Buffalo's gonna actually blow them out just because like they had a couple of guys that opted out on that Marshall's defense
Yeah,
for the NFL, and Jared Patterson is probably gonna go on a tear. He's upset. He didn't opt out as of right now. He didn't opt out, which tells me that he's upset about the last game and he's gonna go in.
absolutely.
Definitely. All right, let's get to our next game. West Kentucky versus Georgia State. Georgia State is favored by 3.5 points. Who you got?
I'll take Georgia State. I'm a little afraid of this game because I don't. I think Georgia State has a good solid defense. I think that Western Kentucky is more of an offensive team. I'm going to take Georgia State to win the game, but I think it's going to be a really close game. I do so.
Definitely. Another game that I had. By the way, I have Georgia State as well. I'm going to take that as well. Just going to take
Yeah.
the line. A game that we had on here that actually got canceled. So this actually comes to as a surprise to me. South Carolina versus UAB got canceled for this year, so they will not have a bowl game. But let's get to our next game. We got Louisiana versus UTS, UTSA. Who you got in this one, Ray? Louisiana is favored by 13.5.
I got Louisiana then. I mean, again, I think that the line tells me all I need to know. I mean, I'm not. Again, I don't know enough about either one of these teams to sit down and break down why I think Louisiana will win. But almost 2 touchdown spread tells me that Louisiana should win the game at least.
Definitely. Louisiana is one of those teams like a Coastal Carolina team that they've been playing really well. They only had one loss this year. The line tells you exactly what you need to know. Louisiana is one of those quiet teams. They had that one loss, but ever since then they've been balling. They've been playing really well. Their game last week against Coastal Carolina got canceled, which caused a little back and forth between the two teams because that was a big game on the schedule.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, it caused both of them to have a draw, I guess. So that's why these two teams are both having a bowl game.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's just crazy. Um, because that would have been a really good game to see Coastal Carolina versus Louisiana. Both were playing really well, but yeah, I can't see Louisiana losing this game, so I'm gonna take
nah.
that as well. Speaking of Coastal Carolina, Coastal Carolina is actually playing in a bowl. Like I said, both teams are playing in bowls this year. They will be playing Liberty, who is 9-1, so they're only a one loss team as well. They are favored by 7.5. Who do you think winning this one, Ray?
I think Coastal Carolina is going to win the game. I do.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
do. I think Coastal Carolina is. I don't want to say they're an underrated team, but I think they're a good, solid team. I
correct.
think they'll beat Liberty. I think that Liberty's not a bad team. I think it'll be fairly close, but I think a touchdown or so is about where it should be.
Yeah, Coastal Carolina's last game, their defense didn't play that well, which their defense normally do play well, but their offense been clicking. Yeah, like you said, right, they are not underrated anymore. Everybody knows who they are. They consider America's team.
Yeah,
Been playing very very well. And I do agree that Carolina is going to win this game. I do think it's going to be a little closer than a touchdown and a half.
I
Uh,
do too. I think it'll be a fairly good game because I think they're both pretty evenly matched teams. I just think Coastal Carolina again is a little bit better than them.
Definitely, definitely. And if you guys haven't had a chance to watch Coastal Carolina, this is your chance because they are on ESPN on this one, not ESPN2, not ESPNU. They're going to be on ESPN. So you get a really good chance to get to see them play. That's going to be on Saturday at 7:30. So make sure you check that out as well. All right, let's get to our next game, which is going to be Miami versus Oklahoma State. I think this is going to be a really good game. Oklahoma State is actually favored by 2. Who you got in this one, Ray?
I'm going to take Miami. I mean, I know I keep beating a dead horse, man. I keep waiting for Miami to give me a good win. I think that they'll win this game. I think they're a more talented team than Oklahoma State.
Yeah,
I just think that if Miami was more consistent, that this would be more like a 7 point line because I think they're a more talented team. But because of their inconsistency, I
yeah,
do expect them to win the game, though.
definitely. I understand why this line is like this. I think Miami's still gonna win. But I kind of understand why the line is like this
Oh,
because
I understand completely because
yeah,
Miami's inconsistent.
exactly, and the fact that they got killed by UNC in the run game their last game, and that was exactly what I was talking about. Like I think Oklahoma has that ability to keep the ball on the ground like UNC, not like UNC because UNC got two incredible running backs, but
Yeah.
um, I think they have the ability to run. They're more of a running team anyway. I think they get in trouble when they start trying to pass the ball. So I think that they're going to try to do the same recipe as UNC and try to keep the ball out of that offensive chance. And if they do that and Miami can't stop it, Oklahoma can win. But I am going to take Miami. I think they're going to overcome it and learn from that game from UNC.
They're a more athletic team. Again, I know why the 2.5 point line is there for Oklahoma State. Miami's been very inconsistent, but I still think they're a more talented team, so I'll take the more talented team.
Definitely. I totally agree. All right, next game is Texas versus Colorado. Texas is favored by 9.5. What do you think about that one, Ray?
I'm going to take Texas with the line. I think Colorado is not a bad team. I
Yeah,
kind of expect it to be a little bit closer than the 9. But if you were asking me who I think is going to win, I think Texas probably should win the game.
definitely.
Sam Ellinger, of course, always scares me a little bit,
Yeah,
but I think that they're a better team. They should win the game. So
yeah. Sam Ellinger is definitely an inconsistent quarterback
yeah.
when it comes to it, but a guy that we thought was going to have a breakout year and just so inconsistent this year. So
he honestly, Jerome, Sam Ellinger's problem is he's not a quarterback.
yeah,
He's a good athlete, but he's not a quarterback.
correct. I agree. I agree. All right, let's get to our last two games, which is going to be Wake Forest versus Wisconsin. Right, who you got?
I'm going to take Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin again is a more physical, more talented team. And I don't want to. I don't know. I think 7 points is right exactly where this game should be. To be honest with you.
I agree. I think Carlos Basham is not playing in this game. No, he already opted out.
No, he opted out. Yep, like two
and
weeks ago, I think. Yeah.
yeah. So, I think I'm gonna give it to Wisconsin as well. And I'm gonna say the same thing. I'm gonna just give it that 7 point line too. So let's
Yeah.
do that. All right, last game before our next podcast. Oh wait, there's one more actually, but we'll talk about that one too then. Iowa versus Missouri. Who you got on that one, Ray? Iowa is
Iowa. I'll
14.
take. What's that?
Iowa's favored by 14 and a half, by the way.
Yeah, well, I'm going to take Iowa because their favor way bigger than what by a lot, and I think they're a more physical team. I do like Missouri's linebacker, who's a nice player, the middle linebacker, but I think that Iowa is a more physical team, and they'll probably cover that 14 points. To be honest with you.
Definitely. I think that yeah, I believe I agree with that. I think that the game is gonna be a little bit more closer.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say it's gonna be a blowout or anything like that, or like a overtime type of game, but I think it's gonna be a little bit closer than 14 and a half. But I do think Iowa's gonna win. So maybe I would say maybe like a 10 point. I'll give them 10 points.
Yeah.
So let's get to our last game. This is probably gonna be the game of the week before we actually talk. This is gonna be actually. Oh, that's why I didn't put it on because it is 8 o'clock on Wednesday. But we're talking about it right now, just in case. But it is Florida versus Oklahoma. Really good game. I think that this is gonna be closer, but Florida is only favored by 3 points. Right? What do you think about that one?
I think that should be a really good game. I don't have that on my list. I don't even Florida's only favored by 3.
Yeah.
I'm going to take Florida in that game, though. I am, and it's not only because of the line. I think Florida is probably feeling like they gave a lot against Alabama, and they deserve to go out on a winning note. And I think that will. And I don't believe in Oklahoma. I don't believe in their quarterback. I don't. He's too inconsistent for me, and I'll take Trask over him. So.
Yeah, and that's why I was like confused with just the 3 points. I would have thought at least 7. I thought.
Yeah, I think it's Oklahoma though. You know how it is with Oklahoma.
Yeah, that's true too. But yeah, so the reason why you don't have it on your list, Ray, is that's an 8 o'clock game, which is going to be before our podcast. So we was gonna talk about it next week. But we'll talk about it this week, and we'll maybe revisit it next week again as well. But guys,
I think you can look at it, but I'd be surprised if Florida doesn't win. To be honest with you, I think their defense is a little better than Oklahoma, so they'll probably win the game.
Totally agree. But guys, that's gonna do it for us today. We thank you guys for getting in for us. It was a little longer podcast this week, but we had a lot to talk about. We had championship weekend, we had bowl games. So check us out next week. We're gonna talk about even more bowl games. Next week's podcast is gonna be even better because we're gonna have the even better matchups for next week for the bowl game. So make sure you check that out. Check us out on that. So also make sure you check us out on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify, where you can find all the player interviews. A lot of guys that we talk about today, we interviewed a lot of them. So make sure you go check that out. Go in the search bar, find a player that you may like. See if you can find them and see if we interview them. Got some great stories on a lot of them. Jared Passon, Trevon Beckett, and many more players. So make sure you check that out. Also check out our website, InsideTheHatches.com, where you find all our blogs, our gaming. We got Draft Central now, so the draft season coming up. So we got a lot of draft stuff coming on as well. We'll be talking a lot more draft stuff once this bowl season start winding down as well. So definitely make sure you check us out again. Also check out all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all that. Make sure you go check that out again. So again, my name is Jerome Jones, your humble host. You got Ray Roberts in the building. Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you next week. Peace.